next up we have Jeff from Axelar and myself. And we're just going to have a chat about how bridges are going on L1 and how Axelar is doing and how we can make it fast. So how are you doing?
Doing great. Oh. Hello.
I think they're going to turn it on.
Hello.
Yep.
Doing great. How are you?
Good. When did you get into Denver?
We actually did a little bit of a ski trip with our team in
Okay.
Breckenridge.
So you got a little ski tan. That's what it is.
It's the goggle tan, right?
Cool. Well, please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about Axelar.
Sure. So my name is Jeff. I lead the business development team here at Axelar. Axelar is an interoperability network. We're in the business of connecting different blockchains, facilitating communications between all the different chains. Today we connect something like 70 different blockchains across all the major EVMs, Cosmos, as well as a number of non-EVM connections, including Solana, Ripple, Stellar, Sui, and a bunch of kind of move chains as well.
And how are you seeing activity across all of these chains that you support?
So I think L1 to L2 there's always going to be activity. I think what we see is that there's also a lot of competition across these routes, right? There's a lot of, I guess, more permissionless deployments of bridges where they can do kind of like one-click deployments like a hyperlane where maybe you're making compromises on the security, but it's fast. And so I think a lot of the transaction volume is obviously happening between L1s to L2s. But we're also seeing a lot of activity between EVM and non-EVMs, right? So the Cosmos to EVM channel is getting a lot of traction, despite what people think about Cosmos ecosystem being dead. The Sol to like base channel is getting a lot of volume, and then we personally think that some of these chains that have been around for a long time, like Ripple and Stellar, maybe they're a little bit more institutional. They don't have as vibrant of DeFi ecosystems, but we think that they're very well capitalized and they're going to essentially will their ecosystems into existence. And so we anticipate, at least from like an institutional and kind of stablecoin adoption side, that these chains will start to gain traction as well.
Very interesting. Do you see any difference in like behavior or maybe the size of the transfers between any of these destinations?
Yeah, and I think there's like a bunch of different tools that you can use to facilitate depending on user preferences, right? So if you have certain size constraints, maybe you'll use something like an Axelar Squid or like a Stargate to facilitate those across, EVMs. If you care more about, latency or, and you have smaller transaction sizes, maybe you'll go for more of like an intense-based product, like a Relay or, like Squid also has an intense-based protocol as well. So I think depending on kind of what users care about, there's different tooling to kind of allow for the type of transaction that you're trying to
And are they
send.
able to access that directly from Axelar, or do they have to go to like different endpoint or location to like based on their preferences, or is it one single interface?
So for Axelar, we have one protocol called Squid. It's essentially a front end that aggregates different kind of transfer methodologies, right? So if you're looking to use like a liquidity-based model, which maybe is better for kind of larger transactions at the expense of latency, that's possible through Squid. If you're looking to do more of like an intense-based model with smaller transaction sizes across, a smaller number of assets, then that's also possible. But there are also a lot of other tooling, right? So like Li-Fi, it's an aggregator. I think they aggregate Squid, Stargate, Layer 0, Hyperlane, like all the different solutions. And so I think it just depends on your preferences for what you're looking to use.
I see. So talk to us about what it means for Axelar to become fast. Like, what are some of the key challenges today? Maybe not just on speed, but that Axelar experiences as a large bridge.
Yeah.
And then maybe we can dive into speed a little bit more.
Yeah. So I think what sets Axelar apart, and maybe the distinction between most of the interoperability solutions, is kind of the security that underpins the network. So Axelar is a proof-of-stake chain built on the Cosmos SDK. We have 75 validators to help secure the network. I think the benefits of that are that it's highly secure, and a lot of kind of leading L1s and asset issuers choose to use Axelar on the basis of its security. I think the downside of a model like this is that you need coordination between 75 validators for every single transaction. And so that ends up resulting in limitations like speed, and then it tends to be a little bit more expensive than some of these I guess, more centralized solutions. And so that's kind of the limitation of Axelar, right? And every time we deploy in a new chain, we need to write a gateway contract to basically, read state on that chain, and then, given the security model, it tends to be a little bit heavier weight than some of these other solutions. I guess to address that, we have a few different products that we put out to market. So first is, for swaps specifically, we route through liquidity on all the chains that we connect. And so that allows for us to essentially do swaps of any size that are essentially limited by how much liquidity there is on chain for any single asset. Again, downside of this is that latency is a little bit, it takes a little bit longer for transactions, tend to be a little bit more expensive. The kind of V2 product that we launched for swaps is an intent-based protocol. This does execution off-chain through market makers, and then does on-chain settlement at a later point in time. And so it ends up being like the market maker that takes the kind of the risk, the settlement risk. And then from an end user perspective, it's essentially instant transactions. I think the limitations of this sort of model is that the number of assets that you can swap between is quite limited, and then the sizing is also limited because market makers don't want to be holding millions of dollars on their balance sheet waiting for these sorts of transactions.
I think that could be a very interesting angle to make fast. What we're seeing on our side for pre-conf adoption is that market makers actually have an outsized appetite for pre-confirmations, and this kind of caught us by surprise because we were originally focused on solvers and searchers and these kind of large transaction value transaction originators, and market makers came up with hey, look, we'd love to use this. So perhaps there's an angle there for them to use pre-comps to kind of speed things up, and then that would kind of reduce their capital costs or maybe the risk that they're taking because they have these crypto economic guarantees, and that they could then kind of facilitate larger or more secure transactions.
Yeah, so I think that makes complete sense, right? So for market makers, it helps kind of decrease the risk because you get confirmation more quickly. And then I think, intent-based swaps I don't think are the end-all be-all. I think it solves a very niche part of the market where, again, it's for a small number of assets, probably mostly stable coins, and then in small kind of transaction sizes. For some of these large transaction sizes, I think it'll still probably run through kind of liquidity-based swapping models, in which case, pre-comps, I think, solve a big need in that part of the market.
And what kind of volumes are you seeing for liquidity-based solutions, or what are the sizes that solution allows that others don't?
So, if you look at both Stargate and Squid, they're both liquidity-based models, but they do different routing, right? So Stargate uses their own liquidity on both, and I would say it's mostly stables and large cap assets. Squid routes through the liquidity of every DEX on every chain that Axelar supports, and so as a result, Squid can support. I don't want to say infinite transaction sizes, but I think it's significantly larger because if you're routing through the Uni V3 or pool on ETH, you're going to be able to support transaction sizes of up to millions of dollars.
Yeah, so millions of dollars it's able to absorb. Yep. But the downside is that the liquidity requirement on those chains is kind of still persistent.
Right.
So perhaps we can optimize those with the pre-confirmations, and that, because I hear this a lot from solvers that some of them don't have large operations, and basically even keeping $100,000 of liquidity on one chain is enough to kind of burden them so much that all of their profitability gets squeezed out, so that they have to either quit supporting those chains or quit the business altogether. So it sounds like there's an opportunity there for one, Axelar to make Ethereum fast, and two, for some of these entities to leverage pre-comps to kind of move forward.
Yeah, I think so.
Wonderful. So what does making Ethereum fast mean to Axelar beyond what we just kind of outlined? Does it mean that all of those chains that you're integrated have quick interoperability? Is it just the speed, or are there any other angles that are interesting for Axelar?
We think that I think our view of the world is that there's going to be thousands of chains, but the reality is like most of the liquidity today exists on mainnet. And so, we think that the mainnet to, whatever third-party chain pathing there will always be volume there. And, latency is always an issue for the origination chain, right, for all of our transactions. And so I think we're constantly thinking internally about ways to kind of accelerate, transactions originating from Ethereum, whether it be these intent-based models like pre-comps, having end users be able to pay like a small fee to kind of accelerate transactions where maybe market makers take on a little bit of additional risk. These are all kind of angles that we're exploring, but like making Ethereum fast is an extremely important problem for us, given how many of the total transactions on the Axelar network originate from Ethereum.
Yeah, that's great to hear. So on that fee point, actually, what do you see as like the user's appetite or maybe demand elasticity in terms of like how much they're willing to pay? Like, because what we've heard from wallets is that a lot of their users will literally take whatever fee the wallet is giving them. They like don't care to like look into it to optimize another dollar enough. So is it the same with bridges? Does it differ based on size or destination or the coin? How do you guys see the user's willingness to kind of pay for such a service?
So, I mean, Axelar is really expensive today for some paths because we're like a slightly heavier weight network. But I think over time, we're seeing fee compression to zero, right? So if you look at all of these like swaps or like LiFi, for example, when they do aggregation, they'll prioritize based on fee, and I think it's clear that like users would prefer to pay less if they can. And so I think users are becoming a little bit more sophisticated. I think especially like people that are doing stuff on chain through like their own protocols are probably going to be a little bit more fee sensitive than people that are doing it through like a wallet that maybe aren't as like sophisticated. And so I think making, in addition to latency, we think a lot about the fee problem. Like how do we give users the optionality to choose between, for the various constraints, whether it be like latency cost, like what chains they're trying to go to, transaction sizing. We want to give them the option to pick and choose the thing that matters more for them. And if fees are a priority, then we want to be able to offer kind of a low-cost solution for them as well.
That's pretty cool. Well, how do you see, over the past few weeks, I don't know to what degree the audience has paid attention, but gas has been extremely low on Ethereum. To the point where, different models have had to adjust to it, protocols that have hard-coded values have had to adjust to it, because, we haven't seen gases like less than a GUI almost ever in recent history, right? Gas has always been this huge problem. So how does the lower gas amounts on L1 affect bridging or Axelar?
Makes the experience better, right? And I think, part of how we think about building product is like we're always going to be beholden to gas fees on different chains. And so we've architected our products in a way such that, for like our intent-based solutions, maybe we'll do settlement on a lower cost chain, right? Such that even if gas prices are spiking on different chains, like we'll always kind of defer to lower cost options to help with settlement and give users a kind of better user experience.
Okay, so I guess L1 in that case becomes one of those lower cost chains, but that's good for business, right? Because you're able to kind of deliver the same value at a lower cost. Now, does the user care? I guess we'll find out. Where now maybe instead of paying 30 GUI, they have 1 GUI that they pay to Ethereum, so that they have maybe 29 GUI or so in leeway that they can spend on some other protocol, so that they can like accelerate this. And kind of deliver the same value for not much of a price difference. So it probably is a new avenue for users to be a little less cognizant of gas fees, and they're able to kind of have a better experience as such. Okay, that's pretty interesting. So last question, what is kind of coming for Axelar? Like what should we look forward to? Is it a growth in volume and development on these chains? Or are there new features or other kind of things in the bridging space that you guys are looking to deploy?
Yeah, so I guess we have like a few main products that we care about. So one is we recently launched a product called Interchain Amplifier. It's essentially a way for us to more permissionlessly onboard chains onto the network. So as I mentioned today, we have something like 70 different chain connections. We hope to scale that to over 100 by the end of the year. And particularly for EVM chains, we should have an easy way for us to like one-click deploy, maybe start with like a slightly more centralized validator set just to get them off the ground, and then we can like add security layers over time. The second product we have is, it's called Interchain Token Service. It's essentially a way for asset issuers to do cross-chain deployment of their token on all the chains that we support today. I would say today it's largely like stablecoins that use this service, as well as like meme coins and chains that want distribution on many chains secured by the Axelar validator set. And then the third, which is I think what we've talked about, is our swaps product, right? So today, we're a permissionless network. Anyone can build on Axelar, but I think the most prominent project that's built on top of Axelar for swaps is Squid, and they've gone through several iterations of allowing for bridging through kind of different like technology models. One is like the liquidity model that we talked about. The other is like an intent-based model. I think there's probably a world where they integrate like pre-comps into their swaps-based product as well, and ultimately it will be like the user's choice for how they want to do the swap and like what they're actually optimizing for, whether it be speed, cost, or whatever else.
Awesome. And how do you see growth across these different products? Is one of them like picking up at a different pace than the other? Is it speaking to a different type of demographic or part of the market?
Yeah, so I think what's interesting about like crypto is that the communities on different chains are actually quite distinct. And so every time we add a new chain, especially like outside the EVM, so every time we add a new chain, that's like thousands of people that previously had never heard about Axelar that we're like onboarding into our ecosystem. And so being able to add kind of distinct VMs and do like user and community acquisition in different geographies, I think is like a kind of key strategy for us. And then obviously we have applications built on top of the network like ITS, Squid, that leverage our infrastructure, that kind of help solve specific user problems, and those will always continue to be growth drivers for the network.
Very cool. Well, thank you for sharing most of these. Just for the audience and people who might be watching on YouTube or somewhere else, can you give us some general like metrics and size about the value that Axelar helps move?
I think, so we have a dashboard. It's called Axelar Scan. So latest information, our block explorer is on that side as well. I think we've moved over, I think, $10 billion of notional volume across a few million transactions to date. And so, continuing to grow very rapidly. And, I think we believe that as we add, every new chain we add, it's like a network effect for the business. So it should kind of accelerate transactions across the network.
Awesome. And is there a way for end users to gain some exposure to the activity on your chain, or not yet?
Yes, we are a proof of stake network. We have a token. Not financial advice, but it is a staking token of our network, and it's a way to kind of participate in governance and help with the security of the network as well.
Awesome. So that's it, folks. You've heard it. Axelar is moving a lot of volume. They have different types of solutions. They're helping make Ethereum fast through their existing solutions and potentially, upgrading them with the pre-comps as well. So we're looking forward to seeing more from Axelar, and thank you for sharing these with us.